You're listening to Brainwork Framework, a business and marketing podcast, brought to you by focus-biz.com.
With me today is Dave Moore, the Chief Innovation Officer for Growth Acceleration Partners, who wants to share how they can digitally transform your business, and we'll be covering how he was able to achieve 43% growth at Gap from 2021 to 2022. This will be an informative and action-packed podcast. Dave, thanks so much for joining me today.
Thanks, Chris. I'm glad to be here.
It is really great to speak with someone in a position like yours that does the type of work that you do, because I'm a big nerd for software, technology, and how it can transform our business and make our lives easier, improve the client experience. And working with such big name companies, it's apparent that you're in with a lot of clients. What's been working and what's not been working when it comes to digital transformation?
All right, so that's a pretty loaded question there, Chris. Let's first start with what's working. We'll be optimists here. Companies that are using, we're in a pretty unstable time economically. Companies that are using this kind of downtime to focus on strategy are going to get paid off in dividends later. So some of them are doing that. They're like, hey, let's get ramped up on exactly what we want to do strategically, so when it does bounce back, we are ready to go. And they are going to distance themselves from the competition. But there are others, because this is a natural feeling and something that we see, using a baseball analogy, they're at the plate with the bat on their shoulder. They're not taking any kind of chances or doing anything, they're just kind of waiting it out. And I understand why they have that strategy, but they're going to be at a disadvantage when things turn around, and they could have used that time to really strategically figure out what they wanted to do.
Absolutely.
So that's one. Another one that is working is any kind of technology decisions that are tied back to the business. So in my line of work, for things that we recommend and advise on that we cannot articulate either increased revenue, decreased cost, better operational efficiency, it's a non-starter. So there's a lot of stuff going on out there in the ecosphere, whether or not it's AI or these other things, that end up being these technology discussions without any real insight, North Star type thing on how exactly it's going to benefit the business. So the ones that can do that are reaping the rewards. So that's been
absolutely. That's fantastic.
Another thing that is working is companies that are going for speed and simplicity. I forgot who said it, but I read it somewhere that, complexity is the enemy of speed. So that's true. And especially in the public cloud, if you can simplify things and make decisions about, we're going to make mistakes because we're going too fast instead of too slow. Those are the teams you want to be on. Those are the companies you want to be in. And those are the movers and the shakers. So focusing on simplicity and speed. And, it's difficult many times to simplify things that are already complicated. So it's a challenging thing for really good architects to take a simplistic view and to break things down to give them that type of speed. And then the last one, I would say anything that is focused on managing the cloud spend. Customers are figuring this out. It is finally working. I like to say that being in the cloud is like living in a hotel. It's like nice for a while, but then after a week, you get your bill and you're like, holy mackerel. The convenience fee for drinking that bottle of water out of the fridge was $7. So it is an awesome ecosystem of products and services, and it's easy to get in there at the all-you-can-eat buffet, and then you get the bill at the end of the month, and you're like, we got to do something here. So customers and companies are getting much smarter about managing that cloud spend.
Oh, absolutely. And what is the alternative for businesses who don't want to use the cloud spend anymore?
Well, the holy grail is a hybrid cloud. So if you were a startup and you don't have a data center or anything on-prem, then it's not even a question. You're going to be all in on cloud, right? But for many of these customers, they already have an existing presence in a data center on hardware that's been paid for. And so when they start migrating to the cloud, you can imagine the difficult conversation where if they do a lift and a shift, just pick it up and move it from there on-prem to the cloud, then they went from everything that was paid for to now leasing by the hour. nothing else has changed. And the CEO is like, what's going on? Now I get a big bill every month that I didn't get before. But if they hybrid cloud, which is I refer to it as a holy grail, leveraging the assets you've already paid for, then bursting out to the public clouds when you need the extra capacity, might be around Christmas, depending on what kind of industry you're in, but using that to scale, but otherwise keeping your static workloads on-prem.
Oh, that's fantastic. So when your company, your team go into a business, what does that process look like? Are these businesses having a lot of pain points that they reach out to you for? Or are you presenting this brand new fancy sort of solution that they didn't even realize before?
There's always pain. There's
Mhm.
always pain first. And then they either find us through a lot of ours come from referrals from very satisfied customers, but they usually have some big problems.
Mhm.
And if they had the easy stuff, that we wouldn't even get a call, right? So,
Mhm.
hey, come in and work with our team, give us an assessment of where we are, what you think we need to do to achieve these business objectives, and how can we apply technology for a business advantage. That's it in a nutshell. And
Mhm.
sometimes they have a lot of technical debt that makes that a very big ship to turn. And other times it's more of, we have smaller companies that we can be pretty nimble here. We can get results a lot quicker. So, but there is always pain, except when, just made me think of this, we have some engagements that's a new product or offering.
Mhm.
And they might have a very small team, but they're not technologists, and they have the executive team, and they're like, we don't have any IT team or engineers. And how do we build this thing that we have this idea for? So we have some of those too. Those are my favorite because they're all fun and there's not problem points. But as far
Mhm.
as satisfaction wise, when you can turn around a struggling organization and see the benefits of that's pretty powerful too.
Oh, that's fantastic. And that does sound fun to me. Being able to be a little bit more creative when they have this idea and they're wondering, how do we execute? How do we do this
Yeah.
the best way possible to bring that to our customer base?
Yep. And it comes down to execution, right?
Mhm.
That, ideas are plentiful. And at the end of the day, can you execute on that? And so we're pretty particular about making sure that anything that we recommend is within the grasp of the client in their wheelhouse type thing. So for
Mhm.
instance, we're not recommending some technologies that would require engineering talent like Netflix has to someone that's not Netflix caliber engineering team, right?
Mhm.
Otherwise, they would fail. So the nature of consulting is custom by its nature. So we're very specific for a particular customer on what we think would work for them and not be a bridge too far.
Oh, wonderful. That's fantastic. Are there certain types of industries that you work best with or certain characteristics of a business? Let's say that be revenue or employee count or type of service that just seems to be the best fit for growth acceleration partners where you can really excel and help them the most?
Well, we cover a broad range. Our two primary ones are telehealth and fintech, but we've also done things outside of that. And we've gone from startups to billion-dollar companies. So full range there. If it's not in our wheelhouse, maybe it's something that has, certain government regulations, or there's an industry that is just like we haven't spent any time in that. We will just refer them to a partner or something like that. So we want to make sure that we're going to delight the customer. And we do a pretty good assessment of that in the initial conversations.
I love that you mentioned that when you say that sometimes if you're just not the right fit or there's a better fit elsewhere with one of your partners or a referral, I love that you have the customer's best interest at heart. That is your
No,
focus.
it's interesting. I'm glad you bring that up too, because my job and my team's job as on the advisory side is to become this trusted agnostic advisor.
Mhm.
And that's part of that. And sometimes you got to say, this is not us to do this. And when you do that, you'd be surprised at things that come back around. It might be that person that you had that conversation is now at a different customer in a different industry, and they remember that, right? And so just building that trust is not something that is an instant process, but little by little to try to gain that trusted advisor is the role that we're trying to achieve.
I think one thing that a lot of business owners overlook is not being so hungry for the sale that you need to manage expectations, because that is going to shape your brand and your reputation, which is probably a reason why you guys get so many referrals, because you're doing such a great job. You know your expertise, how you're going to deliver the solutions to them. And that just creates a win-win experience for everybody.
Agreed. And they just have this comfort level with, there are many engagements that are, most of our engagements are very challenging. It's not like this is a slam dunk, this is a layup for us. We've done this one 100 times. It'd be nice to get one of those, but I haven't had one yet. So there are challenging times of every project. But in my experience, the fact that you are in there with them and like, I'm not going anywhere, we're going to figure this out together, that's worth a lot right there. Mm-hmm. They are not expecting that a single person or a team of people have all the answers. What they are expecting is that you're committed to helping them figure out this problem and you're not going to go anywhere. So mission accomplished.
Dave, you hit the nail on the head here. I can't even stress this enough. It's not so much about what you already know. It's, are you willing to figure it out and be, like you said, be committed to finding the solution to their problems.
That's right.
Man, that's fantastic. Right. As someone who has worked in healthcare in the past and kind of brushed alongside a little bit of telehealth and just the software and systems that are in place, the last time I worked in healthcare was 2014, and I was actually tasked with kind of digitally transforming. I had to bring up some of their old processes and systems up to date into the 21st century here, because everything was by fax, it was by paper, it was mailing things out. And once you realize how incredibly inefficient that is, especially at such a larger scale, you have to wonder, okay, is there a better way to accomplish the end goal here? And that's one big thing with digital transformation is it takes that creative kind of bird's eye view, 20,000 feet above, to look at what are the processes, where's the friction, and then how do we solve that?
And how do we solve that? That's a great description of the overall plan, Chris. And one of the things that we like to do is we provide very prescriptive short-term, mid-term, long-term. In my experience, there's nothing worse than, going for a big bang and 18 months later, the CEO saying, hey, what's the status of that multi-million-dollar project I've seen no benefits from? So you gotta show wins along the way to keep that project going. And so we create a very detailed execution plan to provide those and to show the leadership that you are making progress. And there's going to be some low-hanging fruit initially, but the big heavy hitter ones are going to come down the line, but we're marching to that.
That's fantastic. And I agree, you have to show wins along the way, because again, like you said, if they're investing multi-millions, they want to see some results in some aspect there.
Yep. Crazy expectations,
Hey, I want to return on my investment in business. Oh, crazy thought.
That's right. Man. That's crazy.
That's fantastic. Do you mind sharing a little bit about what is some of the low-hanging fruit that maybe business owners could try to implement themselves? Are there some tools out there or processes that they should be looking at that can help remove friction within their business processes, the client experience, anything like that?
Let me think about that. I can think of a few, especially when you talk about the client experience. Mm-hmm. I'm working with one now that the UI UX is, let's just say it's not great. Mm-hmm. And then the reason I'm using this one as an example is they might believe that their users of this SaaS application don't demand great UI experiences. Mm-hmm. But as we like to say, those are the same ones that are on Instagram and Facebook and Snapchat. They're used to a good experience, right? Mm-hmm. And so they start having these expectations in everything they work with. I do too. So UI UX is typically, I'm not saying it's easy, but it's one of the more lower hanging fruit items that we see a lot. The other one is start leveraging cloud, taking things off your plate. Let the cloud provider do that. It's like one of my favorite quotes is by the CEO of VMware. It's like, cloud computing is not where you do it, it's how you do it. So things that you had a team of people responsible for, it might have been managing databases, it might have been doing backups, it might have been doing DR. Push that to AWS, push that to Azure, and say, we're just going to sign up for that service, and we can focus these resources on doing something else now. that is a pretty low-hanging fruit item that they're getting a lot of mileage out of.
Oh, that's fantastic. And I hope the listeners out there are able to use that and just understand, hey, there are a lot of opportunities out there that don't require year-long contracts in order to fix and take care of right away, something that they can show a little bit more quicker results
Yeah,
from those actions.
good point. And it's like in the old days, you would have to have a significant investment in technology, enterprise license deal for millions of dollars. And if it didn't work out, people got fired, right?
Mhm.
Well, one of the benefits of the cloud is that we're on a consumption model now. So you try something, you experiment, doesn't work out, you ditch it. You try it a different way, you ditch it. Ended up costing you $7 for the week. Not bad, right?
Mhm.
So I like to say that the smaller companies can play bigger with the cloud. Things that were off limits to them before because it required a significant investment are now not. So they can do things the big boys are doing, just paying for the consumption model. So jump in and have at it.
That's one of the most exciting things nowadays for myself as more of like a solopreneur with a small team, and I'm sure for a lot of other business owners as well, is the lack of access to tools and technology that were present back then. Like you said, millions of dollars, a lot of time commitment in order to even get started with any of that. Now with the advancement of AI and automation and just the new tools and tech that are available, now those startups can look like a big box company because they have access to the tools and resources now.
Absolutely. I like to say that software engineers now are basically the stitchers of all these different services that are available in the cloud. We just make them work together. I don't need to build a message queue anymore. I don't need to buy a message queue anymore. I don't need to do 95% of the things I had to do 15 years ago, right? It's there, wait for me to use it. I just have to make it work within the context of my application. So we are now the stitchers of all these available services.
And I think something I wanted to touch on that you mentioned before is with all these tools is a lot of people are worried that AI, automation, the tech and tools are just here to completely erase or take over our jobs. But in reality, this is really about making the current workforce more efficient in order so that it allows the business to be able to scale and expand a little bit more. Those resources like your workforce that you have, they are a tool and an asset to a business. And it's important that we continue to utilize them at their max potential.
I agree. And we could talk about the AI stuff for hours. There is a lot of benefits to that, especially as a software developer, things that make me more productive and more efficient. And I use them. But then I saw this joke on LinkedIn I loved, and it said, hey, if you're a software engineer, worry about AI taking your job away until the customers can get the requirements right, you're safe. You're safe. Until they can explain those to an AI bot, you're safe. So that's pretty accurate.
I have another meme that I really like regarding AI and automation was we thought the robots were supposed to take over the very like hard laborious tasks. Instead, they're writing poetry and painting pictures, the things that we wanted to do.
Oh, that's awesome. I like that. It's true too.
Yeah, absolutely. But again, just like any new technology, there is this sort of acceptance period, this adaptation period where we're trying to figure out what does it do? How does it work? How does this benefit us as business owners? How does it improve the client experience? And then through that adaptation, we actually find, okay, how did I ever do my work without this tool? The software, the tech, I mean, you don't realize your business's full potential until you really automate and start creating efficiencies within your processes. I think it's just a no-brainer for businesses that you need to invest in yourself. And now it's more accessible. There's no reason not to. You don't need to delay anymore.
That's absolutely right. And it also falls into my category of one of the things that people are struggling with is that, I said one of the things that's working is when they can tie these technologies back to a business benefit. They're struggling to do that with some of these AI and big data and machine learning stuff. And so they're like, how can it's cool. But they are like, and this is one of the things that we help them with is like, how can we start leveraging this in a way that's going to give us a competitive advantage? Because we know our competitors are going to try to do something, right? And whether or not they're like trying to corral, if you're a large company, you're trying to corral all your data sources and get them in one place and generate insights for executive decision making. That's one thing. That's hard. Or the other one that's very popular right now that they're struggling with is this whole data as a product. Hey, we're sitting on a gold mine of a large amount of data here, and data is the new oil. So how can we convert this to data as a product? Have you ever tried? How much do you charge for data? You know, in some industries like healthcare, clinical trial patients, right? Clinical trial targets. How many clinical trial targets do you want? You probably pay for that, right? But in other things that are not so exact about how much that data is worth, how much do you charge for that? Where do you put it? What marketplaces does it belong to? How do they get refreshes? And so they're really struggling with this. We see it as an additional revenue stream, but we don't know how to get there.
Oh, interesting. Do you see any possibility that data can work across all different providers, get collected to one single source, and just create this super profile on each human and individual person?
Yes, and each cloud provider will tell you, let them be that source, right?
They're like, give us all the data.
Give us all your data. And here's the thing the listener should be aware of. It's not trivial, but it's not hard to switch cloud providers most of the time, right? Well, for people that are not aware of data charges in the cloud, they all work the same, which is any incoming data is free. Any incoming data is free. Any outbound data you pay for, right? And so the whole playbook is like right in our face. They know that wherever your data resides is going to be where you build applications. You're going to use compute cycles. You're going to use resources, right? Because it's all around your data. So what do they say? Give me your data for free, and then you can have fun in here. And that's the hardest thing to move because it's going to be a big build depending on how much data you have to say, oh, we're going to go from cloud provider A to cloud provider B now. So that's the biggest decision you have to make. It's not where you're going to run your workloads. It's where you're going to put your data.
Absolutely. And in business, when we're trying to improve everything, how are we going to find this balance between what's good for the business and what's good for the customer? How do we make the business owner happy with efficiency while also maintaining that human-to-human connection and actually improve the client experience, that UI, the UX?
Well, that's a tough one, Chris. I don't have a super solid answer for that. We could probably have a good discussion over some margaritas sometime. But I would say that a recent book that I read that I liked was called Marketing Rebellion. And the subtitle of it was The Most Human Company Wins. So the more things that we can do, here we are in investing in technologies that take humans out of it, right? But the more human we can be, like instead of a one-to-many promotional campaign, a single reach out to Bob at XYZ company, right? And he has a lot of really good data points in there about how the traditional approaches don't work anymore because they're all about masses, the marketing to the masses. But the human companies with that human touch, like you were saying, are going to be the leaders.
I agree 1000%. The ones that are more human, the ones that make the real connections, are the ones who are earning the business and are going to grow a lot more quickly. The ones who aren't providing those personalized touch points, that don't feel like you're actually connecting and reaching out to one individual person, they're going to feel like they're just another name placeholder. Hey, contact first name, sort of.
Sure.
That's all I am. I'm just a number.
I bet one thing that you and I have in common is you get many emails with unsolicited reach out. How many of those do you respond to? For me, it's zero. I don't respond to any of them.
Absolutely.
It's a commercial that you laid on me. I didn't ask for. And I got my time's going to be spent doing something else. But that kind of one-to-many to the masses is not working. And it might be just even putting a YouTube video out. Same thing. That wasn't tailored to me. That was like, we hope somebody watches this, and as a result, nobody does. So things like that. But yeah, human touch, critical.
Absolutely. What's been your favorite project to work on throughout your time with Gap?
Oh, with Gap, I don't know if I can mention the company.
Oh, sure.
But I would say, and then I'll give you my favorite of all time.
That's perfect.
Okay, so my favorite with Gap, it was a large online retailer that shall go unnamed, but billion-dollar company that really was struggling with some technology debt that was holding them back. So when
Mhm.
you think about if you have to bring down your website, you're an online retail, online merchant, how much money you're losing every hour that thing's down. And maybe you do 2 maintenances a week where it's down 2 or 3 hours each time. To go from downtime multiple times a week to making updates with no downtime, complete game changer, right? So that's been my favorite one. I like them all. They're like kids. I like them all in different ways, but if I had to choose one, that would be it.
That's fantastic. I love that.
Okay, favorite of all time. I was the franchise technical director at Electronic Arts and making the game Star Wars: The Old Republic, which only took like 8 years, was the highlight of my professional career.
And
So
in terms of the Star Wars franchise, I feel like that's a very short amount of time. You're like, wow, that was really fast.
that's hilarious. Yes. Oh, and here's a little secret that now I guess a lot of people are going to be aware of. I worked on it for 8 years, did other games after that at EA, but I've never seen a Star Wars movie.
No kidding,
Never
really?
seen a Star Wars movie. And then like during the project, I would come home and I'd be like asking my wife, "Do you think I should watch a Star Wars movie?" She's like, "Nah, keep it going. Keep the streak going. It's pretty rare what you got." So I'm like, "Okay, I'm going to be a zagger." And
Yeah, like
I've never seen a Star Wars movie.
you're like, don't give in. Hey, at least that gives you sort of that outside perspective. You're able to come in objectively and just
No,
say,
there's something to be said for that. And making a game, you have all these different disciplines. So for the game producers and all that, they had to have encyclopedic knowledge of Star Wars universe, because when you get that wrong, people will let you know, right? With
mm-hmm.
the millions of fans around the planet. I'm on the technology side of making sure we work around the globe 24/7, do rolling updates and all the high tech stuff,
Mm-hmm.
but not the content of what the game should be.
Oh, nice. That's excellent. So, I mean, my thoughts are I'm seeing a lot of opportunity. I don't know if you are familiar with Activision and what they're
Sure.
doing. I would love to see some of your data solutions over at Activision with Call of Duty. I mean, it has been just packet burst and packet loss
Yeah.
week after week. I don't know if you can help them, but I feel like they could really, really use your help.
Well, I will say that it really stretched me from knowledge acquisition and just a challenging job, as far as the technical problems they have in gaming are
Mhm.
unlike anywhere else in the world,
Really?
right? How can I play against someone in Germany and not have a latency issue that gives he or I or her an advantage, right?
Mhm.
That's a hard problem. I can't go to a soccer game at the high school here and my cell phone work because there's 500 people in there, and yet I have to make something work with millions of concurrent players around the globe. That there's a limited number of people that have done that, which is like that's why it's my claim of as my favorite project ever.
Wow, that's fantastic. What are some tools that business owners, entrepreneurs should be avoiding? It may be something flashy or new, and it seems to promise the world, but it actually doesn't deliver what you need. Have there been tools that you thought seemed really cool at first, but now they're just something of the past?
Here's one that I would be wary of. Anything that really occupies your attention, and
Mhm.
specifically around interruption. And I'm talking about things like Slack. Okay. So the fact that if I'm in deep work, or just trying to focus, it's the context switches that kill us, no matter what size company we're in. But getting that knock, 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 and makes me divert my attention to that. And then I respond to that. And then I go back and I'm like, what was I working on? You get 100 of those in a day, and you're like, what could I have done without that? So, especially small, where you can't have, when you're starting out, you can't have like this kind of like drain on your focus and your attention. Be really wary of the collaboration type software, which can be as disruptive, if not more so than other things.
I really love that you bring that up because to me, Slack seemed like, oh, we're bringing people together. We can be more instant with our questions and responses. It's going to make us more productive. But at the end of the day, when we're shifting our focus and our attention away from our project, it's really just taking us out of the groove. Our brain has to now shift into this mindset and shift back again. And like you said, what were we
Killer.
working on?
It's a context killer. I
Hmm.
do love the Slack story. I don't know if you're familiar on how that was born, but the CEO, the founder of Slack, he wanted to make games. So he tried over and over and over again to make a game and kept failing. And the last time he failed, the liquidators basically came in and said, do you have anything of value here for us as the investors? And he said, well, maybe this collaboration tool that we use to help us make the game. Turns out it's bigger than any game company now, the value of Slack. But yeah, all he wanted to do was make a video game and struggled and failed and ended up creating something that was more successful than any game.
I love that story. I feel like that happens a lot of the time in business is we have these end goals, these intentions that we're trying to accomplish. And sometimes we just fall into something different. We didn't even mean to pivot. And suddenly we're doing something even bigger. And we're like, man, I can't believe that brought me to this. It's pretty incredible.
Agreed. And I think it takes leadership to actually be embracing of that. I'll give you like my example of this is like Amazon.com. We're online retailer, started out with books and now we do other stuff. And then some genius there said, hey, we have all this hardware piled up after Christmas that we're not using. I wonder if we could create some kind of offering around people using our hardware as like a cloud environment.
Mhm.
Now, you and I both know, Chris, the vast majority, probably greater than 90% of companies would have said, what? We're an online retailer. We are not in the cloud business, right?
Mhm.
And yet the latest numbers that I saw were that AWS has exceeded Amazon.com in revenue.
No kidding.
Yeah,
Wow.
crazy.
Wow, that is incredible. And I feel like Amazon is kind of going the direction of the Googles and Microsoft and all these companies. They start with one main set of products or services that they offer. And eventually, I feel like those companies realize that the amount of money that they're paying to other companies for this certain piece of their business, they're just going to take that over and do it themselves. And I feel like maybe
Right.
Amazon did that. They said, we have
Yep.
too much cloud hardware that we just need to do this ourselves.
Here's the interesting thing. It's all interesting to me, but here's another interesting thing to consider. You know, Netflix, here they are in direct competition with Amazon Prime Video. They run on AWS. So, you know, I salute Amazon for like not killing them, right? But
Uh-huh.
the Netflix guys are like, we focus on the movies and all these other things, and we utilize an already good cloud provider that's out there. And they are, when it comes to cloud architecture and cloud architects themselves and engineers, I put them at the top. If a Netflix engineer ever posts anything or presents at a show, I'm in line. They are unbelievable. So yeah, high acclaim to them, but here they are. They're like, we're going to use our main competitor cloud.
Man, that's brilliant. What a strategy for a business to take on that. Hey, you're in direct competition with us. Why don't we provide something of extreme value to you anyways and still make some money off of you? Direct competition. I think that's great.
Yep. Pretty awesome. I think somebody coined it co-opetition, which I love.
I'm jotting that down. That's perfect. Well,
Makes
Dave,
sense.
one more thing I wanted to ask you is the 43% growth at Gap. As a guy with a marketing degree, 43% growth, I mean, that's incredible. That's impressive. Is it really the referrals that are driving that? Is it more outbound, inbound strategy? Are you advertising? Is it outreach? What are you doing?
I think this is a tribute to the entire Gap team and the leadership team. We have multiple lines of business, right? So we have the traditional side, which is building software and data customized solutions, right?
Mhm.
That has been our bread and butter for 17 years. But we've also added, when I came on, the advisory side. So before we would, help customers kind of build what they already thought they needed. Now we're like, what are you trying to do? Let's figure out where you're trying to go and what you're trying to do. And that leads to our engineering side when they get ready to implement. So that combined with a kind of a broader net, having a seat at the executive table and being that trusted advisor, everything starts to open up after that, as long as you're delivering and meeting or exceeding their expectations. But we've also just acquired a company in start of the year that has opened additional markets to us. So it's a combination of being really good at what we've been doing and keeping improving on that while also biting off some additional things that markets that we want to be in and customers we want to get.
Wow, that is super exciting. What is in the future for Gap? Where do you see 2023 into 2024 looking like?
Wow, I think it's going to be busy. We are
Mhm.
busy right now. I think we are going to have some products that we've added to our portfolio become popular. Keep in mind, we have not been a product company, but now we have, through our acquisition, we have products and services. So I think you're going to see a wider range of industries that we're able to participate in and help people. But at the same time, we are not going to lose our vision on exceeding all expectations from every customer engagement. So we're not going to grow too fast. We're going to do it in a very controlled way as long as we're keeping our quality high.
That's brilliant. And Dave, you're exactly the type of business that I would like to work with once I get to that point, because you focus really, it's on the quality while you scale. You need to make sure that you're not losing those really foundational principles that really brought your business to where it is today. And how do you take it even further?
Nailed it.
Yep, that's exactly
Agreed.
it. Now, Dave, where can people find you online, and Gap? Where can they learn more about you?
So LinkedIn, Dave Moore, Gap. Some people think I work at the Gap. It's not the Gap, or otherwise I'd be better dressed than I am today. growthaccelerationpartners.com. You can reach me there. You can find some videos on YouTube, some 2-minute kind of like little edgy technology videos that we published a month ago or maybe 2 months ago. And for any of the listeners that would like just a kind of a complimentary consultation on some of their challenges, reach out to me. I would be glad to do that.
Dave, it has been a pleasure to have you on our podcast to share your experience, to see what's been working in the world of technology, software, marketing, scaling. I mean, all of the fun, nerdy business stuff that not many of us get into. But for people like us, I feel like we really enjoy this type of conversation.
Agreed. Thank you for having me. Thanks.
Absolutely, Dave. Appreciate it.